Hi everyone, welcome back to Homeschool Peace. I'm Cassandra. Today I'm talking all about record keeping. You might live in a state that has a certain requirement at the end of the year for your records, or you could live in a state that doesn't have any type of record keeping. Either state, I think it's really great to have some type of either binder or folder that has a sampling of your child's work for the school year so that you can take a look and see how they've progressed through the school year, as well as having that as a keepsake to be able to look back upon in future years. So in today's video, I'm going to be sharing what I do in the beginning of the year to get ready for that record keeping, how I maintain that through the year, and then what I do at the end of the year, being able to have a final portfolio of my child's samplings of their records. So if you find yourself sort of buried with paperwork and old workbooks and what do you do with all these papers, hopefully some of these tips will help you when you're just being able to organize your child's work for the year. If your state has requirements for record keeping, or if you're not sure of what requirements your state does have for homeschoolers, make sure you go to the Homeschool Legal Defense website. I have that link below. Go click on your state, see what requirements you have for record keeping, just so that you know what you should be preparing for the year. If you find yourself in a state that doesn't have any of these requirements, of course, this is completely optional for you, but as I said, it's so nice to be able to have that keepsake of the child's material for the end of the year, but make sure you know what requirements your state actually has for homeschoolers. The very first thing that I do every school year, just to get the process starting for record keeping, is just to pick up some 3-ring binders. I have one for each of my kids, so I have 3 kids. 2 of them this year are required through the state that I live in to have a final portfolio at the end of the year. But my youngest student, she does not need a portfolio, but even so, I still put together one for her every year. And even my kids prior to them having to have portfolios through our state, I still have portfolios saved for them from past years so that I can look back for their 2-year-old, 3-year-old level and just see, how did they color, when they were 4, how did they write their name? Those cute little things, some extra pictures, or maybe my favorite artwork for the year. I can just have that saved in one spot. So that's what I really love about the portfolios. But just to get started, I have the 3-ring binders, one for each kid. On the front of the 3-ring binder, I just have a simple paper that I print up off my computer that I have their name, the school year, as well as what grade they are in, and then I also have it on the spine of the book as well. When I open up the book, the first thing that I do every single year, and I do this actually in the summertime, is I just put in these little page dividers that have the tabs running across the side. Now I will write on each of the tabs the subjects that my kids have for that year, as well as if there's any type of subjects or requirements that our state has. So if you are in a state that does not have any type of requirements, you would just list out whatever subjects they're working on, their language arts, their English, their history, their math, whatever you're working on for the year. And then if you, again, are in a state that does have requirements, maybe it's civics, fire safety, health, whatever the extra sort of subjects that your state may require, then you would have that running along the tabs as well. So I like setting up the binder before the year has even started, because then when you have paperwork or a workbook page that your child has gone through and you're like, I really want to save that, then you have a spot that you can just punch a hole, 3 holes in it, and then throw it right into your binder. That just helps you stay organized, especially because there is so much papers and worksheets and workbooks that you end up going through during the school year. The next thing that I like to put into my 3-ring binder are these simple picture holders that the photographs can slide directly in. This is not obviously to be a scrapbook, but as you're going through the school year, if your child has a field trip or a special event they attended, or even just some pictures of you working on a science experiment or something you've done in your house, you can throw a few pictures right into your portfolio. And again, it just saves it as a keepsake to be able to remember some of the events or special things that you did in your house. Taking a look at each of the sections with each of the tabs. So for the first tab is just for my binder, I have it as records. And so this would be anything that would be the how many days of school we've gone through. And I use a simple chart. Now this chart that I have right here comes from the Mardell A Simple Plan planner. So that's the planner that I use. And I have the link below to that planner if you're interested in it. This planner has just a simple 2020-2021 school year calendar, and I just go through it and put an X over the date that we actually do schoolwork for the day, and then I add it up for each month, and then by the time we hit the end of the year, our school for our state requires 180 days, so I can see that we've done 180 days of school, and I just keep track of that on this record sheet. The next thing that I have in the records is our reading log. So these would be stories that my child would read on his own. These would be books that we would get out at the library, and so we just keep a running list through the whole entire school year of all the books that he would be reading throughout the school year. And those are the main things that are right inside the records. You know, if I come across anything else that maybe it's an achievement that he's completed or any type of other records for the school year, I'll throw those right in there. But as you can see, this is just the beginning of the school year, and already I have the dates marked off that we've already went to school, as well as the starting book list that we've gone through. So then at the end of the year, I'm not scrambling trying to figure out like what books did he read. It's already started for me. Then the next section I have is field trips. Now, we actually haven't really done much field trips with 2020, but in most years we would have already have done some field trips. And I have this simple field trip record sheet. I have the link below to this form. It's just something that I found off of Pinterest. It's really nice because it has a place for everything. The child can write down, you know, where did they go on their field trip? They can write down maybe 3 things that they saw, 2 things that they learned. They can rate their field trip. I love having these records of the field trips because field trips are just part of learning. So typically in most of our portfolios, we would have a lot of these field trips forms filled out. If we went on a field trip and there was a worksheet or a special paper they handed out during the either performance or the field trip, I would just pop that right into this binder and save that with our portfolio as well. That brings me more into my subjects. So I have like the language arts, literature, math, science, history and civics, geography, health, PE, safety, music and art, Bible, and our electives. So those are the tabs that I have of the main subjects and main things that we will be going through for the year. What I like to do in the beginning of the school year, before the school year even starts, is I just print out a title page. Now this title page is just something that I have simple for me to handwrite. I have the materials and book list. I have my concept and skills, additional activities, and the end of the year review. Now I have in past years tried to sit down on my computer and type out all this information, and I realized that that just doesn't work for my family. I'm typically working on this while I'm sitting on my front porch and my kids are playing on the playground and I'm watching them, so I find that it works better if I just handwrite this as neatly as I can. And I like to get it started before the school year because I know in my family what curriculum we're going to use. Now, if you're still trying to figure out the curriculum that you're using, or you really feel like there's a good chance you might switch curriculum during the school year, obviously you don't want to fill out anything that you know is going to change. But here in my home, we've used the same, say for math, you see we've used it for the last 4 years, as well as Sunlight and our Logic of English. So our main curriculum that we're using, I know we're going to use, I know we're going to finish it out for the school year. So I love just to list out any of the books I know we're going to read, as well as the curriculum that I'm going to be using, and I have that all just listed out ready to go, so that when I hit the end of the year, the only thing I have left to do is really fill out the end of the year review, which is just a final summary of how the year went, what did I think of the curriculum, how did my kid do with the curriculum. And so I have this title page that I have printed, listed for every single tab as I go through the book, and it's all ready to go. It's sitting there on the shelf. I don't have to think about it, and it's just set up so I can just start plugging in the papers as we go through the school year. Now that I have this binder put together and it's just sitting on the shelf ready to go, the next thing that I do is I use my 10-tier drawered cart, and this is how I keep our subjects organized. So pretty much every week, every other week, I go through these drawers and figure out, is there any papers that are in the drawers that my child has completed that belongs in this binder? What I typically do is in the beginning of the year, I like to have maybe 1 or 2 samplings of their work from the beginning of the school year. Then halfway through the school year, I like to have another sort of sampling, like this is the progression they've made with either their handwriting, their math work, what are they doing with their reading, that type of thing. And then at the end of the year, then I have that final sampling that would go in this book. So this binder is not going to be that thick. At the end of the year, I'm not saving every single thing. So if you're trying to figure out like, what do you do with all this work? It's sort of crazy to say, a lot of it does get thrown away. You can't save everything, but if you're making sure you save the important things or an important artwork, then that's where you still have those keepsakes nice and organized. So here's the example of, so this is my language arts that I have for my son. This is the one that's in the green folder. So this week he went through his language arts, and he has a couple sheets that he's still working on. So those I would leave right in the drawer. I know we're still going to work on these this coming week, so I would just leave those alone. He does have 2 papers that he completed, one with a handwriting and one with an illustration. Now, I would have to make the decision, you know, is this something that I want to save for him? I do know that I have a little bit of handwriting included in my binder for him since the year just started, but I don't have a lot, especially for his cursive handwriting. So this is something that I'm going to want to save. So I simply just take this particular one, I go right to our language arts section. I have in here a few papers that I've already saved for him. Again, I'm not saving a lot, it's just a little bit, because if you tried to save everything, this binder would be so full. And so I would save just these few things that I have right here in the language arts section. So that would be that area. Now, if I look at his math section, now for his math, he worked on a lot of things this week. And the one thing that he did is he had a lesson test that he went through. Now, lesson tests I love to save. I really save the unit tests. So we use Math UC and they have unit tests. Those ones I absolutely save. I love the unit tests. Sometimes I will save some of the lesson tests depending on the work that's included in it. I like to give myself a chance to decide, you know, is that something that I really want to save, or is that something that could be pitched? So for a lesson test, that's definitely something I'm going to go into my math section. I'm going to go ahead and stick that right into the math area. Now in my math section in the beginning, I also have a list here that is from the Math UC website that has the lesson practice, the systematic review, and the final test scoring. So I would go right on this final test area and I would make sure I put the grade. I like to do grading for math. I think that's important, even in the early ages for homeschooling, just to add in a little bit of grading just so they understand, you know, it's important to really try to work hard for their tests. So I would add his score right here on this paper, and that gets then filed right inside this math section. Now, the other things that he did this week is he worked on a few lesson materials for his new lesson, which was his lesson 9. Now, these 2 worksheets, unfortunately, it's sad, but I'm not going to save. I can see that he worked on it. I've already checked it. We've reviewed them together. I can't save everything, so this would be one that I would just crumble up and throw away. I would not save all of his math worksheets because there's just way too much to go through. Other things that I would go through for the week, we had our fire safety that we just completed last week. So my kids took some time and drew some fire escape plans. This would absolutely be something that I would save in the binders. Here in our state, we do require fire safety. So I would open my binders up and put these fire safety sheets that we did right into the book. Some other things that I would make sure that I would save for the week is that my student worked on some handwriting just with some Bible verses. I like to save those. Those I pick through at the end of the year and decide, you know, is that something I want to save all of them, or which sample do I want to save? But I love saving some handwriting. Again, not everything, just a sampling of that. And the other thing that I had that I wanted to save from this week's material that I went through is just some artwork. So my son did a painting of a night sky, as well as my one daughter did a little pumpkin drawing. So I do like to save some of their artwork, and I have an art section in the back of the binders that I just put a few artwork through the year that then I can look back on. And those are the ones that actually I love looking back on, from when you go back to things when they were, you know, 3 years old, 4 years old, and see like what were the art they were doing, or if you just look at their handwriting from long ago. Those are just some really cute things. So I love saving just a few of their artwork samples. One of the questions that can come up is what to do with workbooks. You know, they spend a lot of time on the workbooks for their handwriting and their coloring or practice. So what do you save? When my child has completed a workbook, I typically pull out 1 to 2 samplings inside the workbook. You know, if it's a workbook that they're making a progression through, I'll try to pick one from the beginning, middle, and end. If it's something that maybe it's a series of workbooks, maybe I'm only selecting one from each workbook, and then I will hole punch that single sheet that I rip out, and I will put it directly into their binder for the year. At the end of the year, because I can't save everything, I do end up pitching the workbooks with still having those samples right inside these 3-ring binders. So So now I'll just continue doing this process of going through my drawers every week or every other week, making sure those get cleaned out. Sometimes when I go through the drawers, every single thing gets pitched, but then some things I'll run across an artwork or a special paper that they spent a little extra time writing a story, and of course those go right into these binders. So really go through it, keep yourself clean and keep those papers organized, and know that it's okay to pitch a paper. It'll be okay, but if there's something that you can't decide on, it's always easier just to throw it in the binder and then decide later. So that's obviously an option too. The last thing that I wanted to point out for that sort of weekly maintenance that's really helpful is this is just a date stamper. This is something you would see in like an office setting, that they have the month, the day, the year, and you can just stamp the date on the paper. That's really helpful to have ready in your classroom. One of the things that can happen as you progress through the year, maybe in the beginning you're writing the date on the paper, or you're having your child write the date, and then you sort of go through the year and then you realize that you stopped writing the date and you forgot to write the date, and it gets a little confusing on knowing when did you do that work or when did your child do that work. So having a little stamper like this is really helpful. I have the link below. I just picked this up on Amazon, so you can easily just order a stamper like this, stamp your papers as you go through the school year, and it's just going to help you keep really organized. So now I just wanted to share what I do at the end of the year to complete these portfolios. So in the beginning of this binder, I shared how you have a spot where you can put some pictures. So I just will add any final pictures for the end of the school year. I'll go into my record section, make sure that that's completed, any of my book logs. I'll finish the listing of the 180 days for our school year. If you live in a state that you don't have to record 180 days, obviously you probably won't have this, but you would put whatever you want to do for just your record keeping. For in the title pages for each of the subjects, I have that section as the end of the year review. This is just the time for the teacher to be able to share how they felt the year went in that particular subject, maybe some highlights, what their child learned. So I like to add that little bit at the end. This is not required by the state at all. It's just something that I like to have in my binders so I can look back on the different subjects that we've gone through. Once this is completed here in my state, I would turn this portfolio over to my evaluator. We would have a meeting with her and go through what we've done through the year, as well as sharing these samplings of the material. And it's really not that stressful of an experience. You're just really sharing what you have, as well as showing that you did the 180 days. So if you live in a state that does have those requirements, don't let that scare you. It's not that scary to go through that process. You're just sharing the information that you already have put together. So I would go through that. Now the question is, what do you do with this binder at the end of the school year, and how do you store this for in the future, because these binders can get pretty thick and would take up a lot of space. So what I like to use is just 3-prong folders. So this was from last year's material. It was inside this 3-ring binder. I took it out and just put it right in a 3-prong folder. 3-prong folders are really cheap. They do lay flatter, so you can smush more together. So I'll just use a bin. I have a plastic bin that I store these in, and I just have them smashed together inside the bin. And so if I ever did want to go back and take a look at what they did in the past, I can then pull that out and take a look of it. I have gone through some of the ones from maybe like 3 years ago, and when I felt like some things have gotten a little bit oversized, I have removed a few things that were totally not needed, and that just to make some more space. So you can obviously go back through if you needed to throw some things out, because this would take up a lot of space as they progress. But if you can keep them fairly small, this will be something really special that you'd be able to look back on. Their 12th year of school, they'll be able to go back and look through all the material that they've gone through, and some highlights and some keepsake materials and pictures from their schooling time. So hopefully that helps you for how to organize it, especially at the end of the school year. I hope this was helpful for you to be able to see how I organize the information from the beginning, the middle, the end of the year, and how I keep up on keeping the different bins cleaned out and the papers cleaned out. So hopefully you can maybe add some of those things to your schooling just to keep your homeschool space organized and your kids' information all together. And then when you're completing and wrapping up the school year, it'll just be so much easier to put everything together and have everything packaged up, because you had such a great start as you went through your school year. So if you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button and hit that subscribe so you can get updates when I post new videos, and I will talk to you soon. Goodbye.